I'm going to say good afternoon. I am Lisa Popp. I am the project director for the Indiana Deafblind Services Project. And I want to welcome you to our first session of Beyond the Matrix Assessment to Implementation for Students with Complex Communication Needs. And this is with our lead presenter, Nancy Steele, who I will let tell about herself a bit more in a few minutes. I want to start with a few logistics. My Zoom is set so that when you entered the room, your microphones are turned off. And if you want to keep yourself muted until we have any kind of discussion, or if you want to raise your hand to ask a question, you can unmute then. Throughout the session, feel free to post comments in the chat box and questions, and I'll make sure to monitor those so that we can make sure that Nancy can answer whatever they might be. I do have the auto captions on. I didn't have any specific requests for captioning, so it's just auto, but I've been assured that Zoom is not bad these days. So hopefully that's true. It's also being recorded so that if you have to leave early or somebody misses it, we can make that available. I'll make a link and provide it to people who need to access this at a later date. At the end of the session, I'm going to ask you to fill out an evaluation for each of the sessions that we do. And I'm going to say to you that you have to give me evaluation information if you want a certificate of participation. I am not doing separate certificates for each of the sessions. I will provide you with one certificate at the end of the entire training that has all of the contact hours on it. And that will be sent out sometime in December after the last meeting. If you have any technical problems today, you can get a hold of me by my email or my phone number, which I will put in the chat box for you. Or send me a chat, or even better, you might want to talk to one of those patents folks because they probably know more about it than I do, if we have problems at least. I sent out an agenda for everyone, and real quick, we're just going to take a look at that just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Let me pull that up here. Does everybody see the agenda? Awesome. So we've already, first of all, found out.
No,
to interrupt.
No?
We don't see it.
no,
You don't see it, really? Okay, wait. How about now?
yes,
All right. First of all, we've already found out for some reason that link in the agenda didn't work, and I apologize for that. The next thing on there, you'll see that I have a note that all of your handouts are located at this particular Google Drive link. And that will be the case for the entire training. The PowerPoint that Nancy's going to use today, the agenda, and handouts for your homework assignments are all in that link. And when we do the next one, all of those things will be added. So anytime you need something from any of the sessions, it'll be there. Do let me know. I've tested it with at least 2 people and it has worked. So do let me know if you have problems with it and we'll get you into it. Okay. In just a minute, I'm going to have each of you we're going to do a little introduction by team, and then I'll turn it over to Nancy for the bulk of the day, talking about, well, kind of getting everybody on the same page around communication in the matrix. Then at the end of the session, we'll go over what your homework assignments are and anything about questions about those and expectations. And then just some general questions at the very end if you have them for us. I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and get into the real serious discussion for the afternoon.
all right. I'm gonna, well, am I going to, okay, there, you stop sharing, good. So I'm Nancy Steele, and I am an educational consultant. A little bit about my background, and then I'll get the PowerPoint up and we'll get the ball rolling. I was a teacher in Kentucky, and I have to, whoa, full disclosure, my very first year of teaching was in Indiana, in Ripley, Ohio, and Dearborn counties. And I'm a former teacher of the deaf. And then I moved over back to Kentucky side and taught there for 17 years. And then I went to work for the National Center on Deafblindness for about 15 years. In the last 5 years, I've been an educational consultant. And I have had like so many wonderful opportunities. And this is one of those. So I'm super, super excited. You all have no idea, but we are really officially, you guys are the first place where we are officially kicking this off. And so I'm really excited to share with you all the resources and stuff that we've developed. But I will start my PowerPoint and then I'll go in from there. Oh, it helps if I share first, doesn't it? I'm going to share that. Okay. So now if I can get all of this other stuff to go so that I can actually get to my PowerPoint. This is always so frustrating. Okay. All right. So as I said, I've been an educational consultant, and you know, I wanted to give you just a little bit of history of how we got here and what this is all about. I have been able to go into, I don't know how many states, and do a lot of classroom TA as a technical assistant specialist with the deafblind, with the national project with deafblindness. I've been able to just go in and do lots and lots of technical assistance in supporting the state deafblind projects. And that's kind of how I know Lisa and how we've gotten to know each other along the years. I also, when I was at the National Center, I was the lead on literacy. So helped develop a website around literacy for kids with deafblindness, which also, by the way, can be used with other disabilities. And then also worked on developing some modules around interveners, which are the Helen Kellers, or the Annie Sullivans to a Helen Keller. So we developed some content around really training for paraprofessionals who work with people who are deafblind. And so really have had just a lot of experience around going and getting into classrooms. And actually, I still always love to get down on the floor with kids and just really interacting. So in that, one of the things that I always saw is I saw lots of folks across the country using the communication matrix. But what I saw was that they were using it, they used it, but then they put it in the folder and just used it for progress monitoring. So they really didn't use it as something, a tool that could really help them to develop their skills better, or just to look at it and use it as a roadmap. So about 5 years ago, right after I worked with the National Center, after I left there, I was doing a training around communication in West Virginia. And as I was doing that, one of the components was around the communication matrix, where we could ask for follow-up. Well, I knew the communication matrix folks, and they had developed like a module, and it was kind of in a place where Charity Rowland had just retired, and Emily Quinn was just coming on. And this module, which I later discovered, was used mostly for research folks. So when I got a hold of this and really looked at it, and I thought, oh, this does not, any service provider that I know would not be able to use this. So in looking at it, my friends in West Virginia and I started talking about, wow, what if we took this and we looked at each level and we unpacked really instructional strategies along each level to help folks to really see what it is that they could be doing and how they could be doing that. So the folks that were doing that, there were 2 speech therapists. One had, all of us are in our 60s. And so we've all got 30 plus years experience. And so there were 2 SLPs, and 3 of us came back from the teaching background, some of us from deaf ed, some of us from blind, visually impaired, and we all, the three of us who are teachers were also technical assistance providers. The two others were from the Deafblind Project in West Virginia. So it really was, all of us came from just a slightly different perspective. So over the past 4 years, we've really been working on developing some modules around this. Well, so as we did that, we just kept going down little rabbit holes. You know, I would go out and do some work in a classroom or whatever and come back in and go, we need to think about this. Or somebody else would come in and, oh, we need to think about that. So it kept growing and growing. And that's why it's taken 4 years for us to do this. We are just almost like next month, we're finished with all the content, finished with all the things we need to do. Now we're waiting for the web person to put it up on a website. So these materials will be available, especially when we come together face to face, we'll have them. I have access to them now, and we will be sharing with you all along the way. But they will be on the West Virginia Department of Ed's website, as well as on the Communication Matrix website. So they will be free for anyone and everyone to use. Well, as we have gotten to the end of development and looking at it, I shared this content with a friend of mine who works in Georgia at the Georgia Deafblind Project. And she and I go way back. We did lots and lots of work together in classrooms. We would go in and do our technical assistance. Then we'd spend the night at the parent home at a school for the deaf and blind. And we'd stay up all night making materials and so that we could take them in the next day. So she and I are really, really work well together. So we decided we would pilot this with some speech paths in Georgia to just see how they thought about this and help us give us some directions. So we did that in January through March. And then we also, she and a coworker of hers put together this wonderful package of all these additional resources, which we're hoping that as we share them with you, as we roll this out, as you all get with this material that we will be sharing over the next few months, and you're working with your teams and you're doing things, if you put together any kind of worksheets, whatever, or if you have things that you already use that are valuable, we'd love for you to share. Because what we'd like to see happen with this is that it just grows, because everybody has a problem with, you know, having kids that have no communication system or some form where they're not really up to language yet. And so somewhere along the line, if we can all share with each other across the nation, across even the world, then that just makes us stronger and better. And so we're hoping that this just grows, and where we've started it, we're going to tag team with everybody and hope that they will just help make this stronger and better, and we can help these individuals to move along that continuum of communication. So that's kind of the long and short of it. You know, basically what we did was we saw a need and had an opportunity to make a dream come true. Okay, so in explaining this, what I want to do is just kind of tell you how we package this up. This is just a start of this. This is the only slide that I'm really going to dive into the other work. We need to just start with the matrix itself and working with that. But right now, this kind of tells you the extent of all the work that we've been doing. So as we were folding it out, you can see all the different 7 levels that are on the matrix and that everybody communicates, you know, and so we really felt that that was a strong message that we needed to give to everyone. So then we started thinking about, well, there's more to communication. There's so much more that goes into it. And that if we don't look holistically at a lot of things, that could be part of the problem. So the first thing, if you look at the bottom, it says availability to learn. And that's just knowing that that person is ready, is available. That goes into that biobehavioral responses, and if they're ready to learn, if they're in a sleepy state, then that's probably not the best time for you to give your instruction, right? So we're looking at the availability, both internal factors and external factors. And we'll talk much more about all of that as we unfold this work. Then the next thing is just the building a foundation for communication. These are the blocks that we feel like are really, really important and have to be in place. And it starts with that trusting relationship. We as teachers, and speech paths, whatever your role is, as we're looking in the school setting or even in an early intervention setting, we take that for granted, I think. A lot of times we just assume because we're at school and because we're loving, trusting people that the kids trust us. But really, we have to stop and think about where they've come from. And so many of our kids have come from NICUs, and they really have prior experiences that are not the norm. So therefore, when we get them at school, how do they know that we're trusting people? How do they know that we don't have hypodermic needles that we're going to stick them or do things to them that are saving their lives, of course, but still that takes away your trust from other people, and especially if you really have complex needs as well. Then the other piece is routines. I think after COVID, we all know the importance of our routines and how when they were busted, just how important they were to us. And I think, if we get those routines really nailed down for our individuals and help them to really understand each step of those routines, then and their part in it and what comes next, so that they become rote. That's where we can multitask, because we know our routines so well that we can multitask, and we a lot of times don't even think about what we're doing until something happens. Like, I'm going to take driving your car, and driving to work. You're driving to work. Most times we don't think about it because we know that routine so well. We know how to get there until there's a wreck or something's in the road and we have to take an alternate route. We don't really think about those things, and just getting dressed. We can get dressed, we can eat, we can do all of these 5, 6, 7 things together at the same time because we know each one of those individually. And I think that we haven't made it a point to really get these kids into routines where it becomes rote for them. Then the consistency of partners. And this is where I think that we really need to spend some time. At my group in West Virginia and I we laugh. It's not funny, but we've laughed about, we know a kid that he had 7 different ways, and they found this out quite by accident. He had 7 different ways that he had to ask for a Pepsi. And they got to talking one day, and I guess they were in the classroom or something, and one person said, well, I make him do this. And another one, well, he does this for me. Another one says, well, he just grabs me and takes me to the refrigerator. Another one says, and this is the old sign for Coke, he gives me this. So they had all of these different ways, 7 different ways that child had to ask to get the same thing. Now, what kind of brain power does that take, And unfortunately, we do that to kids all the time. Why? Because we really haven't looked at how we're all doing it together. So that consistency in cueing, how we're going to cue them, or what language we're all going to use. You know, those are all the, or what kind of sign or whatever it is. We don't do a very good job of that. And when I say we, I'm guilty on my teams, prior teams. So I can say that because, you know, I can wear that badge as well. But that's one of the things that I think that if we look at those things, then that's automatically going to make it better. I often think about kids when they transition from preschool to school, from elementary into middle to high. A lot of times, you know, they get these routines, they get these folks that are working with them, they get certain cues that are going on and the kid understands, and then they transition. And unfortunately, a lot of those little things don't move in with them when they go to the next place. You may have some service providers that will go and they can help fill in the gaps, but we need to do a better job as service providers in helping them so that they don't have to go, all right, you know, because I often think about the kids' perspective and they're going, oh, great, I got a whole new team again. Well, here's this one. They might know my cues. This one might understand when I kick my leg, but that one, I don't know. You know, so I often think of it from the child's standpoint, and we don't do a good job on that. Then we're looking at the individual's interest. You know, a lot of times we do things with them that they're not necessarily interested in. So if we look at those interests, that's a way to connect with them. That's a way to build that relationship. That's a way to get them to the point where they really understand. And then that responsive and supportive environment. And that's just looking at different parts of the environment that can help them, and that we are, you know, fully engaged when we have them. And sometimes that's only a minute, if that we have gain their attention and really get them where we're working with them. But we need to be also turning off of our brain where we're thinking about, oh, I got laundry to do tonight. I've got to pick up the kids after school. What am I going to have for supper? Oh, shoot, I got to go to the grocery store. So our mind's going on that when we're doing these rote things with them, like feeding and stuff. We got to stop that brain and really focus in, because we're missing a lot of those little bitty things that kids are doing. Okay, so then once we build that foundation and look at those things, you know, the matrix, it measures expressive communication. But we all know that you've got to give that receptive piece to them. You got to pump that in before you can ever expect them to express it. And you got to do it a lot of times. You got to do it multiple times before they ever get it. And that's okay. That's part of, we all had to do that too, you know? So it's a matter of really pumping that in and being very systematic about doing that. And then the other piece is concept development, because a lot of times we look at skills. We really are pretty good at developing skills for kids and helping them to develop those skills. We know that, and we're really good at those things. I don't think that we think that much as we should on concept development, and just what concepts we are developing, what concepts they don't have. Especially, you know, I come from the deaf-blind world, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to other entities. But, you know, there's a lot to be said for incidental learning. There's so much that we learn incidentally that nobody sits down and teaches us. You know, we just learned it because we've watched others. We know, oh, get your math book out, so everybody gets that out. Or we're doing this and people watch. When you go in a restaurant, you know whether you're supposed to wait or be seated and stuff. You've learned that incidentally by watching others and through your experience. Think about our learners here. Think about our individuals. a lot of them haven't developed those concepts because they haven't had the exposure. They haven't had the experience. How many multiple times have you done all of those things so that it does become rote to you? It goes back to those routines and really understanding those concepts that and how we can broaden them and get them bigger. So that's part of what we're going to bring out too. And then the last piece is literacy, because literacy and communication, they dovetail each other. They happen at the same time. They develop at the same time. They complement each other. So, you know, we're not going deep and wide with literacy, but we got a slide or two in our presentations about, you need to think about while you're doing this, here's the literacy things that you're targeting. Here are the literacy things that are happening at the same time, so that helps connect it for you as the instructor. Okay, so any questions y'all can put in the chat pod or whatever, but at this point, I'm just giving an overview for today. So I thought that what we might need to do today is just look very briefly. We're not going to go deep and wide into the matrix because you all have done the matrix or you're about to do the matrix, right? So I just want to go just briefly about each of the levels. We're going to talk about those, and then from there we'll go on to other things today, and then we will dive much deeper into a lot of these things later. All right, so today, you know, if we're going to talk about level 1 and level 2, these are your non-intentionally communicative times, these pre-symbolic levels. So these, you know, if you think about newborn level 1, you're going to think about that pre-intentional. So those are more like reflexes. You know, they're crying. Everything is interpreted by the adult on level 1 and level 2. We're interpreting, we're putting those things. And the best way I know how to explain this also is to look at normal, typically developing kids. So those newborns at level 1, they cry and we don't really know why. We kind of can guess just by looking at our watch. Oh, it's been a couple of hours, they're probably hungry. Or, you know, sometimes it's that smell that lets us know why they're crying. You know, there are lots of different things that we interpret. A lot of the level 1, I feel personally, and this is me personally, I feel like once people identify, a lot of times people will go with level 1 or think that their person is at level 1. But then when you start looking at the behaviors and really thinking about it and having them watch, then I think that you start seeing it so that they become level 2s because you've started looking and going, oh, yeah, you know, he really does do that every time we do whatever. So I think, you know, with level 1 yes, there are people that are on level 1 still, but I think that once we start looking, that then we can quickly move them into some more intentional behaviors because we are paying attention. But those level 1 behaviors that we're talking about are crying or cooing, maybe grunt, gurgling, maybe some kind of head or limb movement, some of those postural changes or facial expressions. So those are all things that you might see at a level 1. At level 2, that's where it becomes intentional, where you start, you know, how once you have that newborn and he's been there for 2 or 3 months, you start hearing just a little difference in a cry. You know, one cry, and the mom, especially the moms, sometimes the dads too, I don't want to, you know, slight them, but you know, they start, oh, wait a minute, that means he's hungry, or oh, that means he has gas. You know, they know that those different cries or different things that they do mean different things, and they're attaching that communicative intent to that behavior. It's not purposefully communicative to others. They're doing it because of discomfort or because of whatever, hunger, whatever it is. You know, they may kick or turn their head, but it's all interpreted by the adult, but it's not directed towards the adult. They haven't figured out that they have a communication partner yet. And we see lots of kids at level 2 that they have these cries, they have these behaviors, but they just do not know that they have communicative partners. Okay, so some of those behaviors may be fussing, babbling sounds, gazing at an object, smiling, approaching an object, maybe averting their head, moving away from, pushing away, or taking an object. So see, we have lots of different behaviors that we can identify, which it's up to us to interpret them. Okay, so now when we get into level 3 and 4, we're starting to get into intentional communication. It's the development of intentionality, and that's when we can really celebrate, because they have figured out that others are communicative partners, that they may come to you. You know, I think of it more as they use us as tools, you know, because they're going to come over. They know that you can get them things. You can go and get them things in the refrigerator. So they're going to come and grab you and take you over there. So they may tug you or push things away. But it is directed to the communication partner. So that's where it's really important. And this is such a critical stage, because now they understand that he can impact someone else's behavior. So if I pull you, then I can get you to come and do what I need you to do. So he's intentionally communicating because he acknowledges that partner. Okay. And that's the day that we really celebrate, when they get there, because then we can really start pushing them forward. So then those behaviors that we might see, and these are just some examples, so don't think that this is all inclusive by any means, but laughing, crying, screaming, some eye contact, they may manipulate by pulling or tugging, they may use a calling device. So that's level 3. Then level 4 is still pre-symbolic, but then we're starting to see those conventional behaviors like pointing or nodding the head, or that 3-point gaze where I look at you, I look at the object, then I look at you. You know, so there are those kind of things that are going on. And you may hear some intonated sounds, you know, very definite sounds that come out that let you know. They may have vocalizations that accompany the gestures. They may wave, they may point, that alternating gaze like I talked about, the shrug. They may open their palm, the hands are up and out, extend an object. They may nod or shake their head, wave, kiss. They're, you know, all of those things. We may use 2 choice options with symbols or device, but, you know, here again, when you're looking at 3 and 4, that's all pre-symbolic. They're not ready for it. I look at that more, excuse me. I look at that more as you're giving it to them receptively, so that they're able to do it receptively, and not so much that we're going to get that from them in a consistent manner, in a consistent way. And then they may start yes and no as options. So then when we get to levels 5, 6, and 7, we finally have gotten to symbolic levels. And, you know, this is the stuff that we really, if we don't do the first 4 stages and know that they've gone through them, then this is where they get hung up, because we put these things in front of them, and we're expecting them to use some of these devices and that kind of stuff, but they're not fully ready to do that until they get to these stages. Oh, I need to back up for 1 second. And if you have a blind or visually impaired child, they may not go through level 4, and that's okay, because so much of vision really is impacted in level 4. You're using, how do we see those that we have to wave high and by? How do we know the point? We watched others, right? So a blind or low vision child may not use those things because they haven't or can't see them. So it's not unusual for you to have nothing in level 4. Okay, so level 5 then, when we get to the symbolic, level 5 is concrete symbols. And that's things that are physically represent what they represent in a way that is obvious to the child. They either look like or feel like or move like or sound like what they represent. And this is just very concrete. So they may mimic sounds with objects or use iconic gestures, like mine or come or sit. They may pantomime an object or action or an object. And they're able to selection of concrete 2 or 3 dimensional symbols. A lot of our students will also skip level 5 and go straight into level 6 and abstract symbols. Some kids will stay in level 5 and need level 5. Some of them will skip that stage as well. So it's not unusual for them not to have, a lot in level 5. That's not where you hit the panic button. If they have stuff in level 6, then you can assume that they already understand concrete symbols, so you can go on and start using abstract symbols. So abstract symbols such as speech, manual signs, or braille, or printed words, these symbols do not look like, feel, or sound like anything they represent. They are used one at a time, so single spoken words or single manual signs, or a selection of abstract symbols, or abstract shapes, or graphics, or written words, or brailled words. So these are just some of the ways that you can use abstract symbols. Okay, so then when we get to level 7, that's where they're starting to combine those symbols and in any sorts of symbols, whether they be tangible symbols, picture symbols, the printed word, whatever it is. Any sort of symbols into ordered 2 or 3 symbol combinations. So instead of just juice or more or whatever, they may start saying want juice or more juice or I want juice, whatever it is. They're starting to put a couple of words together. And that's when they're at level 7. Once they get past that, then the matrix is not where we should even look. And I would assume all of you know that. So the combination of 2 or more spoken words, a combination of 2 or more manual signs or 2 or more symbols, whatever those combination. Once they get past that, then like I said, we don't do anything more with the matrix. You would go on to other assessments. And there are lots of speech therapists on here that could tell us those, but that's for another day, right? Okay, so now the other thing that really we've talked about in my little team in West Virginia, and that's around teaming. And what is it and why is it important? And I've been on lots and lots of school teams over the years, and a lot of them don't operate and function as true teams. I know that Patton's has been working together and you guys are sharing time. You're doing those kind of more robust teaming things. And that's why it's so important, because these kids are so complex that we can't just meet once a year at the IEP, everybody gives their little party piece, and then we all split off and everybody does their own thing. Because then we're only taking pieces of the child and we're not getting that total picture. And sometimes when we just meet another person in the hallway, we might share some things. So that's why we asked about the shared space, to put things so that we can share information with each other. That's why, like Patton's has had, and I know the Deafblind Project has had meetings with the school teams, and some school teams will get together more than just a couple of times a year. Most, with these really complex kids, we've got to do that so that we get our act together and everybody's on the same page. Y'all excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm talking too much, huh? Okay. So when we think about an effective description of effective teamwork, it's all coordinated. We're sharing information so that each person can facilitate their part of the group's goals. And it's gotten a lot better and easier since we do have technology that can help us, so that we don't all have to congregate together and be in the same room. Now we're able to get on Zoom or whatever and have, those meetings, or we have those shared spaces so that we can. So that makes it a lot easier than it used to be. They're cooperative. And each team member assists to meet each other's goals. If the OT comes in and they know that everybody else is using this cue to mean let's get up or whatever, and I'm making that up, then it's a lot better, because then that helps that SLP or whoever else's goals. There are lots of ways that we can help each other with those goals if we're aware of how to do those things. And then we're just collaborative, which means we share goals. There's no reason for everybody to have, one student to have 57 goals. And I've unfortunately seen that from time to time. Why can't we share goals? All of us work on things together so that we are moving this person up and helping them. And it's that shared responsibility for the outcomes, so that we're all in this together and we're all interdependent of each other. Okay, so when we're, collaborative teaming means each one is sharing that planning. And I think Patton's has been doing that with their groups. I know the Deafblind projects have done. Each member is bringing their expertise and their experience and background to the group. It helps if I'm with that teacher of the visually impaired and she tells me what kind of loss and what that really means. What does it mean when they say that person has CVI? What does that mean? And what do I need to do as somebody who's not and doesn't have any background or experience with CVI? What do I need to do in order to help that person? So the teacher of the visually impaired is going to tell me, they have a central vision loss. Well, if I don't know that, then I'm presenting things in a normal way, and that child is missing all of that. I need to know if I need to pull it down and to their left, or whatever it is. And so it's that understanding from each other about what works best for the student, and sharing that with others and helping them to learn those strategies. It's okay. We used to have our own little, I'm the teacher of the deaf, here's my little toolkit. I'm not going to share with you all, because if I share with you all, then what is my role? And unfortunately, that happens a lot. So if we share, and I'm learning from the TVI and I'm learning from the SLP about different strategies and stuff, then that's going to make me a stronger teacher when I'm working with other kids in other places. So in order to have that collaborative team, we need to have shared planning and shared resources and shared meaningful goals, and just a unity of purpose. Like, what are we doing here? What do we want to see happen with this student? And that's where the parents come in. It's very important for them to be able, my teaching really changed when I started asking the parent, what do you want your child to learn this year? What's going to really help you? And what's going to help you so that they become independent in something? Maybe it's just that they can now put on their shoe. Well, as the teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, that may not have technically been my job, But if that's going to help that parent and ultimately that kid, not only now, but for the rest of their life, I think that's a pretty good goal. I think that's a pretty good purpose for us. You know, there also needs to be shared leadership. Each one of us are strong leaders in our own right. And so, you know, one person shouldn't drive this team. We're talking about communication here, and typically an SLP would take the lead on that. Well, that's true, and we certainly want to let the SLP do a lot of that stuff, but there are times that maybe they don't need to take that lead. Maybe others do. So we need to share that leadership role, and it's okay to release that too, you know, because that also makes us stronger. And then those shared values, and you know, where I've talked about that trusting relationship with the student, well, same thing with adults and with our teams. You know, it's very vulnerable when you go, I don't know what to do with this kid. But unfortunately, a lot of us don't know, but we don't want to admit it. So we sit back and we don't say things, you know, but we got to trust each other enough to say, you know, I don't know what to do here, but let's try it together, and we can surely come up with something. That makes us a stronger team. That makes us better as service providers. Then here's a quote that's about shared vision. In order for a shared vision to impact the day-to-day work of people throughout an organization, its members must be able to understand how their work contributes to a larger purpose. So sometimes we've got to sit back and we've got to think about, how does my work help contribute to the education of this child? And how can I make that stronger? How can I help others in that purpose? Because we're all, at the end of the day, we're all in this because we love kids and we love seeing them learn. And so we all already have that shared vision. It's a matter of all of us working together with that. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir on this, but I feel like we need to just talk about that just a little bit. And this is probably, you know, through the modules that you will be looking at and stuff, we do allude to teaming because it is an important part of this. And that's why we ask for teams to be a part of this, because everybody on the team has a responsibility here. And everybody on the team needs to know what's going on and how we're going to drive this. And everybody on the team needs to talk about what they feel like are the most important things that they're going to all share and work on together. Okay, the one thing that a dear friend of mine said this to me a while back, and the more I think about it, the more she's right. And that is, what the child needs, the team needs. So in other words, if a child needs a communication system, the team needs to understand how to use that communication system. The whole team needs to know that. If a child needs a trusting relationship, well, the team needs a trusting relationship as well. There are lots of things that if the child needs it, the team needs it as well. Maybe it's in a different way. Maybe they need to know more about whatever, but they still have needs that are wrapped around that child's needs, because none of us have all the answers by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so that's kind of my party piece for so far today. I think that from here, we're going to talk about assignments. You know, we're going to do these webinars. We're going to do 3 webinars, and then we're going to get together in November. So between each of these webinars, we're going to give you assignments. They're not hard, they're not long, but we want you to just be aware that there are things that we want you to do, because it's going to make you stronger and it's going to help you to really determine and think about what's happening and help you unfold some of these things. And once again, as we're doing this, as you develop tools, we'd love for you to share back with us, because then we're going to turn around and share it with the rest of the world. Okay, so the first thing is that we want you to administer the matrix with your team, including the parents. And now some of you, if you've just done that, you don't need to. If you haven't done it recently, if it's been a while, we'd like for you just to revisit so that you know where you are with that student and where your team is heading. Okay, so that's the first thing. Anybody that needs help with that the Pattons folks, we're going to look at Jessica, the folks from the Deafblind Project, we're going to look at Lisa. I'll be happy to help if anybody needs help with, but if you all feel like you're struggling or you don't know how or whatever, by all means, reach out to your Pattons people, reach out to us, and somebody will help you, because we all want you to know how to administer it the right way. I will tell you that there is a discrepancy between the online version of the matrix and the paper version. And that's when you're on the online version, and we go in this in one of our modules, in the foundation modules. So you'll get it, but I'll just tell you that you really want to double check those answers at the very first on A, B, or C, because if you could overlook things and it will automatically kick you out of there if you answer in a certain way. So you just want to double check when you're doing that first thing online. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. If you have any questions, we can talk about that further. Okay, so then we also have like a planning tool. Remember I told you about my friend in Georgia, Martha, who she has been working on this planning tool around the matrix for over 15 years. And she and I get together every once in a while and we work on it and think about it and how do we make it better. So we will be eventually, that's our communication plan that we're going to be working on. I'm sure, Pattons, you probably have something as well. So, it doesn't matter to me, but we definitely want to come out with some communication plans and really thinking about how we're going to move this forward. There's a likes and dislikes form that I'm going to talk about in just a second. And then if you don't have a created shared virtual space, you need to get one of those, whatever your school district allows you to have. And then we need to access it, and then the parents need to be able to access it as well. So I'm going to talk about each one of those. First, here's the matrix. I'm sure you guys know about how to get to it, and communicationmatrix.org is the online version. I think the first 5 that you do are free. After that, there's a small fee to administer. And in the paper version, there are ways that you can download it for free. Okay, here's the likes and dislikes form that we're going to ask you to think about as a team. And what it does is, if you talk about likes with kids and what do they like, just about every service provider I know goes, oh, he loves music. Well, what kind of music? Does he like hard rock? Does he like classical? Does he like country? Let's dig a little deeper. I like this particular form that's out of Washington State project. And the reason why I like it is because it really dives into more of a sensory needs around these students. And I really think if we look at these, then we really get a better picture. And that's, everybody on the team, including the parents, including sometimes the siblings. I am a sib, and I can tell you that I could have told you everything about my brother because, being the budding teacher at age 4, I could tell you everything you liked, everything you didn't like, all that good stuff. So sometimes we need to go outside of our educational realm to get some of these answers. But it's about the foods, what kind of particular taste or texture, because then you start seeing patterns with things. Oh, he likes crunchy things. He likes cold things. That's that you start developing, and that's where you get your OT on board and go, let's talk about some of these things. How does that go? Smells. I don't think that we necessarily always think about smells or whatever. Being from the deaf-blind world, that sometimes is a way that we can get in there. So therefore, that's something that, and I know some kids with autism will smell things, before as they come up. It's really interesting, but I don't want you to go out and just start doing all these different smells and aromatherapy stuff with them to identify. It's just more of, if you see things, if you've identified things, then touch, as what kind of textures, what kind of, do they like hugs? Do they like deep touch? Do they like light touch? What kind of fabrics do they like? What kind of things make them crazy? That, that talking about touch and getting a little bit deeper into that. What kind of movement do they like? Do they like rocking, bouncing, swinging, spinning, all kinds of stuff? Do that vibration? Do they like that car ride? Do they like toys that vibrate? Do they like appliances that vibrate? What are they drawn to? And the reason why we're doing this is because this helps you with your instruction. This helps you to connect with them. If I'm talking to you about things you like, you're going to be engaged. If I talk about things that you don't, you're going to zone out on me because you won't care. Then we're going to talk about sights and sounds. So what kind of lights and colors and what kind of voice or music or pitch or loudness or environmental sounds do they like? What kind of, what about how they use their muscles? What do they like? Do they like to push and pull things? Do they like to bear weight? Some of our kids really work well if they get some of that weight bearing, or they're able to push things or pull things down a hallway to help them with that availability to learn, that really getting them into that sensory piece. And so many of our individuals have so many sensory pieces to them. So who are the people they like, and what are the places that they like to go to? What are the activities they like to do? What are toys? Any kind of self-stim behaviors, and anything else you can think of that they like. I've had kids that have stemmed off of a cookie sheet, and they just could spend hours just flipping that cookie sheet. But then when you look at their history and where this individual came from, she spent the first 5 years of her life in a hospital bed in those big giant cages that they have, as to keep them in their beds. And it's metal. So yeah, for her, because she hadn't had as much touch and it hadn't been around a lot of folks other than nurses who were coming in to save her life and keep her alive. The metal and the cold metal was her friend, and she spent a lot of time, with that and doing that. So those are things that we really want to explore. The dislikes is the exact same thing, except that you're going to look at their dislikes. What do they don't like? So in filling that out, that's kind of going to help you to know what to do. All right. So then we're going to ask you to do activity 1 of this worksheet that we've put together. And it's more about, what do we know about this individual that will impact communication? And this, we put, when I put this up here, this is the form that you will use. It's electronic. Of course, you could print it out and write it. We don't care how you do it. We also have one where we have examples of what are the limitations, what are the explanations and the examples. So we have one that's also completed so that it gives you ideas to think about, but we want to know, what do you know about this individual's vision? You know, are there limitations in this area? Yes or no? And if there are, then you need to go on and be writing about that and just compiling those things. So that might mean that you do a little dive into their folder, or that you talk to mom, or, you know, do we get, and where, how do we know this? How do you know these things? Did you get it from a doctor's report? Did you get it from that functional vision assessment? You know, how do you know this? And if you don't know these things, about all of these different things, we ask that you know, take this time to observe. And then maybe a little bit later, after a couple of weeks of everybody observing and thinking about and all that, then maybe that's when you come back and you adjust some of these questions. So then there's vision, there's hearing, there's the availability to learn. There's also that trusting relationship, concept development, the concept skills. What concepts do they know? What's their receptive language like? Gross motor and fine motor. So we're asking you to really tease and unpack and just play detective. Basically, this first piece is really about being a detective and coming up with all these answers so that everybody on the team has a pretty good idea of how this individual operates and what's best for them, how they use their vision, how they use their hearing or whatever. Okay, so then the shared space, and I don't know if anybody has any questions or concerns about that, or doesn't have one or whatever. We suggest that you use either Google Drive or Teams, or basically really whatever your district will allow. When you get that shared space, if you don't already have it, we'd like for you to include the parent, the entire team, everybody that's on that child's team, including the parents. And then if you will put me on there, if you'll put Lisa, and then I guess Jessica as well, because she's our, I guess, Jessica, are you our contact person, or would you rather us just go with the patents people? It doesn't matter to me.
I would say contact your AIM team specialist first and get with them. And if an AIM team specialist, if you're not sure where to go next, let me know and I can assist you.
Now, if anybody needs help with administration of the matrix, please reach out and contact. I would assume, once again, Jessica, are you going to say your patents people?
Absolutely. David, Lisa Benfield and I are ready and willing to walk you through one or do a training for your district, whatever you need.
That's awesome. And then Lisa will help her folks, and then I am here to help anybody that needs it as well. All right. So guess what, folks? Does anybody have any questions? Because here's what we're going to say. If you will design, you'll get your shared space set up, and then you put your assignments, those likes and dislikes, and that first activity where you're looking at all the different things. If you will put those and your matrix profile, if you will put those in your shared space with us and share it with us by October 3rd, that gives you just a little bit under a month, but hopefully, and I know things are hopefully starting to settle down a little bit in schools. I'm going to knock on wood for you because I know how crazy the first of school can be. So if you have any problems with any of those things, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And then our next webinar will be same bat time on October 6th. So do we have any questions? Anything in the chat pod? Anything that anyone wants to say? I'm going to stop sharing so that we can all come back. Anybody?
I did want to remind everybody the link that I gave you to the Google Drive, the forms that Nancy showed you for your homework, as well as the example filled out form are all in there. So let me know if anybody has any problems getting to them, but I think you should be good to go with all of those.
Right. That's and whoever's saying that, just asked that question about the likes and dislikes. That form is as well, in that it's in your agenda in that link. Okay, and I didn't see what that last question, or we use our communication package student for this? Yes, I would think, right?
Yes, please. I think that would be fantastic. However, if your team decides, no, we don't want to use a communication package student, or we want to use several, feel free to do whatever you like for those of you on communication packages. It doesn't have to be, but we would encourage it. How about that? That's a shorter answer.
Okay. And please do not hesitate. Through this, we're all going to be, you know, I think as we go through this and we look at these different things, there's not anything in here that is you don't already know in a lot of ways. It's just we're perhaps giving it to you in with another perspective and just a deeper, maybe a different way of thinking of things. So I appreciate the fact that all of you are going on this journey with us, and I am just excited along the way. Since you are actually getting this before West Virginia is getting this. So, and they knew that I was going to go out and play in other states, and I'm playing in this state, your state. I'm playing in Oklahoma, I'm playing in Mississippi, I'm playing in Kentucky. So I'm starting to get out. You know, the big thing, I want people to use the matrix and use our modules as a guide to help them with instruction. So along the way, please, any feedback, any things that you think we might need to add to it, let us know, because we're building this together and you're on this journey with us now. So I'm excited to have all of you with me now. It's just, that makes me so happy, because this is the dream that you know, I've thought about for years and years, and we're actually making it happen. Okay. So with that, look at that. See, we did get you out early.
We did, although I failed in getting the evaluation link up.
Don't leave yet. Don't leave.
I'm putting it up now, but I will send it in an email tomorrow. The other thing I wanted you all to know is that for the next one, I had a little problem with some of your emails. I think that's all straightened out now. You should get a reminder a week in advance and a reminder the day before. So you can be careful to look for those. So. And the evaluation link is out there now.
All right. And if you want in your shared drive, if you want to put like what level you think that you're going to target, because we're going to target a level. We may target several levels, but guess what? We have several levels to share with you. So, you know, while we're looking at one specific individual, or if you're good, go on and do as many as you want. You be fruitful and multiply. But, you know, for our purposes, I think it's easier if you learn this process with one student and then you can replicate it with others. But hopefully along this way, as we're learning these things, as we're doing these things, you're not only thinking about your one little folk that you're dealing with, you also, other kids start coming to mind. Oh yeah, there's this. Oh, I remember this kid. You know, so hopefully it will stem things and really help. That is our wish and our dream. Okay, so with that, you guys have a lovely, lovely day. We've made it through the first one.